The stable ledger showed my horse reassigned to a different owner of record, and the office said turnout decisions would go through him. I met him because he caught a loose gate. I was backing the trailer in when the latch failed and the panel swung. He stepped in without asking, lifted the weight, set it back on the hinge, and tied it off with the kind of knot that doesn't need explanation. He said the wind liked to test that corner. He didn't wait for thanks. He checked the waters and walked away. I board privately. I pay for consistency. I handle my own tack, my own schedule, my own vet calls. He worked mornings at the barn between competitions, someone who knew when a horse was sore before it showed. He pointed out a rub under the girth and brought ointment from the tack room without charging me for it. He said it would save time later. After that, he was there when I arrived. Not hovering. Useful. He held the horse when the farrier ran late. He swapped a cracked halter for a spare and wrote my name on it in marker so it wouldn't wander. When the vet asked about turnout changes, he answered with the hours he'd already observed. The closeness formed through handling. Through him knowing where to stand so a nervous step didn't become a problem. Through me letting him adjust things that mattered because he adjusted them quietly. He started messaging me updates I hadn't asked for. Photos after exercise. Notes about footing. A reminder when the weather shifted. When I traveled, he kept the routine and sent a single line at night. All good. I gave him permission to schedule training rides when my calendar clogged. Just rides. Just conditioning. He posted them on the board so the barn knew. It worked. The first night he stayed over was during a storm that cut the road. He slept in the tack room, boots by the door, alarm set for feeding. In the morning, the aisle was clean and my horse was already cooling out. The paperwork came later as a routine update. Emergency contact confirmation. Temporary authorization for care decisions if I couldn't be reached. The manager highlighted the line and said it reduced delays. I signed on the hood of my car with rain starting again. The barn ran smoother. My phone rang less. Bills came itemized and paid on time. He knew which days the horse needed lighter work and adjusted without asking. The ledger change arrived quietly. I noticed it when I went to sign out tack and my name wasn't on the line anymore. The office said the managing owner had requested consolidation. They said it was for clarity. They said nothing about sale. I asked who that was. They said his name like it explained everything. I walked the aisle and found him brushing down, steady rhythm, not looking up. He said the manager wanted one point of contact. He said it didn't change anything that mattered. He said the horse was better for the consistency. He handed me the brush when he finished, stepped back to give space like he always had. I took it because it was already warm in my hand. After that, the barn didn't feel different. It functioned better. He didn't take my slot in the aisle. He didn't move my tack. He still waited for me to arrive before changing anything visible. The ledger line was the only thing that had shifted. When I asked the manager to put my name back, she said the update came with the authorization I'd signed. She said it reduced confusion when decisions had to be made quickly. She said the managing owner handled scheduling, billing, and turnout adjustments now. She asked if I wanted him looped in on the conversation. I said no. He kept doing what he'd been doing. Conditioning rides logged neatly. Feet picked, legs cooled, notes taped to my stall door about weather changes. He sent fewer messages now. Not because there was less to say, because there was less to ask. The farrier texted him directly and got an answer before I saw the question. The vet called him with a follow-up and thanked him for being thorough. When I mentioned wanting to adjust feed, he said he'd already spoken to the nutritionist and made a small change that morning. It worked. The coat shone. The weight settled. The closeness grew through permission I didn't revoke. Through me arriving to find decisions already aligned with what I would have chosen. Through the quiet relief of not needing to argue. He started staying later when I stayed late. Leaned against the stall door while I cooled the horse out. Talked about footing and schedules, not feelings. When I traveled again, he said he'd handle everything and sent one photo at the end of the week. Mane braided, standing square, looking at the camera like nothing had moved. The bills routed through him. He forwarded them with notes, paid, adjusted, credited. When I asked about a charge, he explained and said he'd already resolved it. The first time I noticed I hadn't called the barn in days, it didn't register as loss. Felt like trust. At a small schooling show, the office handed him the packet. He signed us in. He paid the fees. He told me the order of go and warmed the horse up to the minute. When a steward asked about tack compliance, he answered before I reached the gate. We placed clean. After, he loosened the girth and said the horse had felt good all week. He said consistency mattered more than intensity. He said this was working. I nodded because the horse was breathing easy and because nothing had gone wrong. That night, a routine email came from the stable system. Contact roles confirmed. Decision authority updated. Effective immediately. My name was still there. Just listed under writer. I closed it and went to sleep, already planning the next show he told me about, not noticing that I hadn't entered it myself. The midpoint came through a vet call. I was at my desk when my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. It wasn't from the clinic. It was from him. He said the vet had come by unexpectedly. He said nothing was wrong. He said they discussed a minor adjustment and already made it. I drove to the barn anyway. The horse was in the cross ties, calm, leg wrapped with a neat bandage I hadn't authorized. The vet stood nearby, finishing notes. She greeted me politely and said everything looked good. She thanked him for being proactive and said it helped to have an owner who paid attention. I didn't correct her. He stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, giving space. When the vet left, he explained what they'd done. Conservative. Sensible. He said he hadn't wanted to bother me during the workday. The midpoint wasn't alarm. It was relief. I realized I hadn't been asked whether to proceed, and that it hadn't occurred to me to be upset. After that, the barn system changed tone. Emails from management addressed him. Scheduling notices copied me second. When I tried to book a lesson slot, the calendar blocked me and suggested I contact the managing owner. I forwarded the message to him. He replied that he'd already handled it. He said the trainer preferred one point of coordination. He said it kept the horse consistent. At the next show, the office handed him the release form. Owner's signature required. He signed while I adjusted my gloves. No one questioned it. We placed again. That night, an automated notice arrived from the registry. Ownership details updated. Emergency authority confirmed. Long-term care designation extended. I read it twice. The language matched what I'd signed months ago. Expanded in ways I hadn't tracked. There was no checkbox to undo it. Just confirmation. I asked him how long this setup was meant to last. He said until it stopped working. He said the horse was thriving. He said consistency was everything with animals like this. I watched the horse lower his head into the hay net, calm, settled, and believed him because nothing had broken, because the leg was sound, because the results were clean. The midpoint settled there, in the space where care and control shared the same outcome, and I could no longer tell which one was holding the reins. After that, my role narrowed without anyone naming it. I still rode. I still cleaned tack. I still showed up. But decisions happened elsewhere and arrived to me as updates. Turnout adjusted. Feed tweaked. Shoes reset. He told me after, always with reasons that made sense. The barn started asking him questions I used to answer. Blanket weights. Show entries. Shipping windows. When I was standing there, they still looked to him first. He answered and then glanced at me like a courtesy. I didn't interrupt. The bills changed format. Consolidated. Paid early. He forwarded confirmations with short notes. Handled, credited, resolved. When I asked for a breakdown, he said the office preferred a single ledger. He said it avoided errors. The horse continued to look good. Better than good. Muscled evenly. Calm in the aisle. He adjusted workdays without asking and the results showed. I told myself outcomes mattered more than process. At a show 2 states away, I arrived late after traffic. The horse was already braided, tacked, walked. He handed me the reins at the in-gate and said the steward had moved our time up. He said it was fine. I went in cold and rode clean. After, The office handed him the ribbons and asked where to send the invoice. He answered without turning. That night, an email arrived from the stable's insurance carrier. Policy endorsement confirmed. Named insured updated. I was listed as rider and beneficiary. He was listed as owner and authorized decision maker. I forwarded it to him with a question mark. He replied that this protected us if anything happened. He said it was standard once responsibility shifted. He said I didn't need to worry about it. The next morning, my key didn't open the feed room. I waited until someone else came through. No one commented. He noticed later and said he'd requested tighter access after a theft scare. He said he'd get me added back. He didn't say when. I asked if I could trailer out for a few days to ride somewhere quieter. He said the horse had a program now. He said disrupting it could set things back. He said we were too close to the next show to change routine. I nodded because the schedule he showed me was already full. That evening, I watched him turn the horse out. The horse followed his hand without hesitation. When he closed the gate, he latched it with the knot I'd seen the first day. Clean. Final. He said the horse trusted him. He said that trust mattered. I leaned on the fence and agreed, not noticing that I hadn't held the lead rope once that week. The pressure arrived as reassurance. He started explaining decisions before I asked about them. Why the horse stayed in that paddock. Why the next show mattered. Why the farrier cycle shouldn't shift yet. He framed everything as protection. He said he didn't want me worrying. I noticed the trainer stopped texting me entirely. When I asked a question in person, she answered politely and said she'd confirm with him. When I mentioned I'd already decided, she smiled and said she knew. But the program ran through one channel now. I didn't argue. A sponsor banner appeared on the stall door. Not a big one. Subtle. He said it came with support. Supplements covered. Entry fees reduced. He said it was smart to accept while the horse was in form. I asked what they wanted in return. He said consistency. At the next show, a photographer asked him to step in for a quick owner shot. He waved me over like an afterthought and stood slightly in front, one hand on the horse's neck. The photographer thanked him for managing everything so smoothly. When the photos posted, his name was tagged. Mine wasn't. I saw the registry update late at night, scrolling out of habit. Ownership confirmed. Rider listed as authorized user. Transfer date backdated to the day of the authorization I'd signed in the rain. I checked my files. That signature again. Familiar. Reasonable. Permanent where I'd thought it was temporary. I asked if I could take the horse home for a few days. Not to change anything. Just to ride quietly. He said home wasn't set up for this level of work. He said the footing mattered. He said the program didn't travel well. He said it would be better if I trusted the system. He stayed calm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't say no directly. He said not now. The next bill came addressed to him only. I was copied. Payment already processed. When I asked how I reimbursed him, he said we'd settle later. He said it wasn't urgent. I stopped asking. One afternoon, I arrived early and found the stall empty. Panic came and went in a second. He texted back immediately. Said the horse was on the walker. Said it was good for him. Said he'd bring him back shortly. I stood there with the lead rope in my hand, realizing I didn't know the schedule anymore. When the horse came back, he led him in. The horse followed easily, head low, steps matched. He handed me the rope and said I could cool him out if I wanted. I walked the aisle twice. The horse stayed with me, but his attention kept sliding back toward the gate, toward where he'd come from. That night, a notification came from the stable system. Access roles updated. Rider privileges adjusted. Owner privileges unchanged. I closed it without replying. The barn lights clicked off one by one as I sat on the tack trunk, listening to the quiet that comes after everyone leaves. I still had the horse. I still rode. I just wasn't the one deciding what that meant anymore. The notice came taped to the stall door. Turnout relocation confirmed. Owner approval on file. Rider access adjusted accordingly. I stood there long enough for the paper to curl at the corners. The stall was stripped. No tack, no nameplate, no bucket with my initials. The aisle smelled the same. That was the only familiar thing. I found him at the far end of the barn, talking quietly with the manager. He finished before I reached them, nodded once, and said he'd been meaning to call. He said the horse needed a quieter facility for the next phase. He said it was temporary. He said the footing there would protect the joints. I asked where the horse was. He said he'd already been moved. I asked when I'd agreed to that. He said it was covered under the authority I'd given him. He said emergencies weren't always loud. He said acting early prevented regret. The manager looked at me with practiced sympathy and said I could schedule visits once the horse settled. She said coordination would go through the owner. I didn't correct her. I drove to the new place that evening. Private, gated, clean. The kind of barn that smells like money and restraint. The front desk took my name and said they'd need to check access. They made a call and asked me to wait. They came back and said today wasn't a good day. They said the horse was in acclimation. They said it was better if I didn't disrupt the routine yet. They asked if I wanted them to notify him that I'd come by. I said no. When I got home, there was a message from him waiting. He said the move went smoothly. He said the horse traveled well. He said this was the right decision. He said I could thank him later. The registry update hit my inbox after midnight. Ownership reaffirmed. Primary contact unchanged. Rider privileges suspended pending evaluation. I read it twice. In the morning, my saddle was still in the garage. My helmet by the door. Everything that belonged to me was exactly where I'd left it. Except the horse. I called the registry myself. They said disputes had to be initiated by the owner of record. They said I could submit a statement if I wanted. They said it would be reviewed. Reviewed by whom, I asked. They said the owner. I didn't submit anything. The last message from him came that night. He said I should take a break. He said I'd been carrying too much for too long. He said the horse was in good hands now. He said this didn't have to be hard. I stood in my garage and ran my hand over the saddle, dust already settling in the seams, understanding that the thing I'd lost wasn't access. It was authority. I could still ride somewhere else someday. But the horse I trusted my decisions with now answered to someone who had learned exactly how to take them from me without ever needing to pull the reins.